right, we're breaking down the Minnesota Vikings' latest win against the struggling Jacksonville Jaguars. They go into Jacksonville and come out victorious 25-16. This was a game between two of the coldest teams in the NFL. The Jaguars came in losers of 7 straight games. Meanwhile, Minnesota came into this game dropping 6 of their last 7. So unless a tie happens, something's got to give. Somebody's got to win. And, you know, I thought that this was a very poorly played game by both teams because it seemed like there was a large stretch of that game where neither team really wanted to win. You had 13 penalties by the Jaguars, so they obviously had no interest in coming away victorious. And then Minnesota, they had so many goal-to-go opportunities, and they found new ways to screw them up. Different ways to screw them up, I should say. They would settle for, at one point they settled for a field goal. At one point they went for it on 4th down, and they were stuffed at the goal line, turnover on downs. At another point, they turned over. It was a Matt Asiata fumble at the goal line, and not only was it a fumble by Asiata, but he fumbled it into the end zone. Jacksonville recovered it for a touchback. So you turn over the ball, and then you give good field position to the opponent. Then Asiata punched it in at one point in the goal line situation, and then Kai Forbath missed the extra point. So it was just so many screwed up situations that Minnesota was giving to Jacksonville. But Jacksonville sucked so much that they couldn't do anything with these opportunities. So I don't even feel like Minnesota won the game. I feel like they stunk it up less than Jacksonville. And by default, they come away with a win. That's basically how I feel about this game. You know, going into the summary, the NFL record for most field goals by both teams in a game was 9, and this game had 7 total field goals. So both teams struggled offensively, finishing their drives. And this was despite the fact that Minnesota had a lot of big plays down the field, had 3 catches of over 40 yards. Of course, somebody's calling me while I'm trying to make a video. Why wouldn't they? It's probably some spam call at that. So, as I was saying, you had Thielen, you had Rudolph, you had Diggs. They all had catches over 40 yards. And you also had a big play on special teams thanks to Cordero Patterson with a kick return. So, a lot of big plays. And on each and every single one of those big plays, it set up not touchdowns, but field goals. And that's why coming into the 4th quarter, Jacksonville was ahead. Jacksonville was ahead 16-12 going into the 4th quarter, thanks to 3 field goals from Jason Myers. He did miss a 41-yarder right before the half, but he hit 3 of them. Plus, they had a Ryan Walters. It was a 15-yard slant pattern that he found a nice hole in the zone, and Bortles threw it right on target. So that was a big play for them. But of course, you know, they're Jacksonville, so they're going to screw it up. Marqise Lee had a big game. He had a 100-yard receiving game. Drew some defensive penalties on Xavier Rhodes, and you know, I don't follow Jacksonville much at all, and why would I? Because they're just a terrible team. But I was curious to see, because he was a very good player at USC, how he's progressing, and now that he's healthy, he had a very impressive performance. I'd like to see what he does when he signs on as a free agent with a real NFL team. Maybe that would help his that would help his fantasy stats. You know, another thing that I'd like to say, as well, Kyle Rudolph scored the touchdown with 3:14 remaining. Nice little dump pass on play action. Bradford hit him in the flat, and that basically salted the game away. The last thing I'd say, Bradford, I thought this is the best game of his Vikings career. 292 yards passing, 1 touchdown that I just mentioned, 24 of 34 passing. But the most important stat, I think, was that he had no turnovers and he did not get sacked. And, you know, he moved around in the pocket a lot better than I thought, you know, coming up into this game that I've seen all season from him. He got rid of the ball quickly, precisely, accurately. I mean, of course, he's playing against the Jaguars. They don't have any pass rushers of note, I don't think, that would, you know, put the fear of Jesus into a quarterback. But still, you know, he did what he had to do, and it was impressive. He even had a 15-yard run in this game, which was the longest run of the season for him. So he's starting to process information, making plays on the fly. These are things that I don't think are his strengths, but he did a really good job in this game, and that contributed greatly to Minnesota winning the game. Plus, in that final drive when they were scoring the Rudolph touchdown, there were some big conversions. Particularly, I remember the one to Cordell Patterson. It was 3rd and 10 to keep the clock going and keep the pressure on the Jags defense. So he did a really great job in this game. Not a spectacular game, but he did a great job managing it. So going forward, this sets up a really interesting matchup between Green Bay. You know, if the Minnesota Vikings have their eyes set on bumping off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who currently own the 6th seed in the NFC, then this is a must-win coming up. Obviously, all the rest of these games are going to be must-win. They have no margin for error at 7-6. So, you know, this is going to be a really big matchup against Green Bay. And plus, Green Bay probably needs that game too. They're in action this week against Seattle. At the time of this video I'm recording, I don't know the outcome of that game. But I've got to believe that Green Bay wants that game just as badly as Minnesota. So that's going to be an exciting game to follow next week. So that's it for now. Minnesota gets off the schneid. They had an ugly win, not a nice. It was an ugly win against the Jags. They win by 9, 25-16, setting up a nice, exciting matchup with Green Bay next week. Football Rob, signing off.